Hey everybody, it's Ricky Heller here from rickyheller.com. I'm a special diet coach and I blog at rickyheller.com, and I'm also the owner of the Candida Kickstart program for people just about to begin an anti-candida diet and they don't know where to begin. So what I want to talk about today is my favorite sweetener, or let me say one of my two favorite sweeteners, which is stevia or stevia, depending on how you pronounce it. Because if you are looking to cut back your sugar consumption, or if you're a type 2 diabetic, or if you're about to start an anti-candida diet and you can't have any other sweeteners, really on an anti-candida diet, the only two kinds of sweetener you can have that are really recommended by all the different diets are stevia and xylitol. So today I want to talk about stevia because it seems that there are a lot of misconceptions about it, and also I know for a lot of people it's something that is a tough sweetener to swallow, and I myself am very sweet on stevia, so I want to tell you why. So just to begin, why would you want to use stevia? Well, it's an herbal sweetener. It's actually a natural, 100% natural sweetener in its natural form. It's a leafy herb that you could grow in your own backyard. And I think a lot of people have the misconception that it's an artificial sweetener like aspartame or sucralose. No, no, no. It is totally natural, and it is zero on the glycemic index, which means it doesn't impact your blood sugar at all. And it has 0 calories. So to me, that sounds pretty good. It's also up to 100 times sweeter than sugar. So you need a teensy tiny little bit. So those are some of the reasons why you might want to use it. Studies have also shown in recent years, there are some promising studies that show that it might lower blood pressure for some people. And recently a study that showed in the Journal of Nutritional Cancer that it could potentially help to kill cancer cells. So there are lots of positive things associated with stevia. So what are the negatives? Because there's a lot of trash talk out there about stevia. So first of all, one of the things that people say, they tend to say, is that it is not helpful because it's been shown to cause potential sterilization in rats. Well, with those kinds of studies, most of the time, there have not been studies done in humans, but the ones that were done on mice and rats have been given the animals quantities of stevia. When you look at the relative amounts that they're getting, what you would have to eat as a human to consume the same amount, it's way more than you could possibly eat in a day, in a month. It's just way too much, especially considering that most of the stevia you buy, you take teeny little quantities, like 5 drops is what I put in my bowl of oatmeal, for instance. And those 5 drops are diluted because the stevia itself is in a carrier liquid, either glycerin or alcohol or filtered water. So it would be incredibly difficult for a human to eat that much stevia on a regular basis. So I really wouldn't worry about that. That said, if you are trying to conceive, you might want to be careful and just be absolutely sure and not eat stevia. That's what I would do if I were trying to conceive. For me, at my age, pregnancy is not an issue. And in fact, if I were to get pregnant at my age, I'd probably make history around the world, and then I would not have any problems whatsoever for the rest of my life. So that might not be such a bad thing. So I wouldn't worry about that if you're just the average consumer. If that's just my own opinion. A second thing that is concerning about stevia for a lot of people is that a lot of the brands that you buy are not pure. So Stevia rebaudiana is the name of the plant. And there are 2 major compounds, the compounds that make stevia sweet. There are 10 of them in total. They're called glycosides. And so there is stevioside, stevioside, and rebaudioside, or Reb-A. And those are the 2 major compounds that are used to give stevia its sweetness. So usually those 2 are extracted, and it's the stevia side that's bitter, and the Reb-A is less bitter, and so it tends to be used more often. But as I said, because stevia is so much sweeter than sugar, in a lot of cases there are fillers added. So in a lot of the commercial products you buy that are not pure stevia, you're going to have dextrose added, or maltitol, or cellulose, or other fillers that are going to bulk it up so that you can actually measure it in a way that's easier. So my feeling would be, if you ever want to use stevia, you want to be sure never to buy the ones that say measures 1 for 1 like sugar, because more often than not, there are going to be things in there that you don't want. So you want to be sure you're buying the pure stevia extract. So that's one issue. And also the whole issue of GMOs. Well, it's very easy to see if your stevia is GMO or not. Most of them are labeled, or be sure that you buy organic. So that's one of the other things. I talked a little bit about the health risks. As I said, there was one study that showed that there are potential risks to fertility if you're looking to have kids. But again, if that doesn't apply to you, and as I said, for most people, that isn't even an issue because of the amounts. Unless you are going wild on stevia, I wouldn't see that as a potential problem. And so far, there have been no studies with humans that have seen that as a problem. So what's the other problem? If everything else about it is okay, it seems to be an ideal sweetener in the sense of 0 calories, 0 on the glycemic index. Well, many people have told me when I talk about baking and making desserts with stevia, oh, I hate it. It has such a bitter aftertaste, or it tastes so metallic. I can't stand it. And so that more likely than not is connected to the stevia side. But even the Rhabadio side or Reb A can have potential aftertaste. And so today I'm going to tell you how I avoid that aftertaste and how I have really, I love stevia. I really love it. It's absolutely my favorite and most used sweetener. And because I'm on an anti-candida diet for life, I use it as my primary sweetener. I combined with xylitol, which I've started using in recent years. So the first thing to do, if you want to be sure that you can love stevia, is make sure you get the pure stuff. So you want the brands that have the Reb A or pure extract, and they should say pure stevia on them. And really nothing else except perhaps filtered water or alcohol. And if you're on an anti-candida diet, there is some controversy about whether you should use the ones with alcohol, or glycerin, which is another carrier. So I'm going to show you a couple of the brands that I have here. My absolute favorite brand is this one here, New Naturals. And I am not an ambassador or an affiliate for New Naturals. So New Naturals, I find it has no aftertaste whatsoever, and it is very pure. It's really good quality. This is peppermint flavor. They have different flavors. They have plain, they have vanilla, lots of flavors. And so I like to use the flavor depending on what it is that I'm making. Another really good brand is this one, Sweet Leaf. I find that theirs tastes really good too. And here in Canada, we can get very easily Now brand, which is would be my third choice, but they have some really neat flavors like this one, which is cinnamon, which is great for the winter months that just passed, and making that kind of baking. And then we've got, this is, whoops, New Naturals. You can see how much I use it. There's all kinds of fingerprints on the cover. The ingredient in here is simply Stevia rhabodiana. It's a white powder. And so it is so intensely sweet. I don't know if you can see that without me spilling it on my, yeah, looks kind of like an illicit drug, but it is not. And so you really need such a tiny amount of this powder. It's so concentrated. I've had this jar, although it costs a fortune. I've had this jar for probably a year, and it's only about half full. And then I was talking about the absolute pure leaves that you can grow in your yard. So here, Organic Traditions offers stevia leaf that's just been dehydrated and pulverized into a powder. And that's kind of what the plant looks like if you want to grow it. A lot of people grow the plant and put the leaves in their tea for a sweet tea, and it's delicious. So this has, as I said, the two main sweet compounds are stevia side and Rhabadio side, but this has all of the compounds. So this is not quite as sweet tasting as the other stuff. So I use this because it has a little bit more of a flavor from the leaves. I would use this in chocolate desserts or desserts that have a really hearty flavor. So that's one way, is be sure you're using real stevia and pure stevia. The second thing I would say with stevia, and this is really my mantra when it comes to stevia, is less is more. Less is more. In other words, always start with less sweetening power than you think you're going to need, because our tendency, at least here in North America, is, if I'm trying to recreate a cookie, I'm going to try to make it really sweet, and I'm going to add lots of stevia because I know I want it really sweet. But we forget how concentrated stevia is, and so you only need a few drops. So I would start with, if I think I need 5 drops, I start with 3 drops, taste test, 1 drop at a time, add more and more, because there's a very fine line between stevia being just perfectly sweet and being too sweet. And once you add too much, that's when you get into that territory of it might have a slight bitter aftertaste. So you want to be sure that you use a bit less than you think is necessary. The other thing that I would say is always avoid a simple combination of bitter plus stevia, because there's that tendency toward bitterness in stevia. And if you're using like chocolate, something else that has a tendency toward bitterness, they tend to bring out the worst in each other, like kind of like Kanye West and Kim Kardashian when you put them together. So you don't want to heighten those negative qualities. So if I want to sweeten something like chocolate, then I would use less stevia, and that brings me to my 4th point, which is combine it with a different sweetener if you can. So even if you are on an anti-candida diet where you don't have a lot of choices for sweetener, you could use a little bit of xylitol plus a little bit of stevia, and the two together, the xylitol is going to give you your base sweetness. The stevia is going to bump up that sweetness because it's so concentrated. And with chocolate flavors, you will not even notice that there's any stevia in there. I promise you. If you can have other sweeteners, you might start with coconut sugar, but coconut sugar is not that sweet. So rather than using a cup of coconut sugar, you could use half a cup of coconut sugar and bump up the sweetness with a little bit of stevia. And I do that in some of my recipes. I would like to just, I'm going to share with you if I can. I'll show you. So for instance, here are some examples. This is a chocolate cheesecake that uses both xylitol and stevia, and that's on my blog. These are some strawberry-filled strawberry cream eggs that you can see there, and here's a chocolate cherry ice cream. So for instance, those are all, and I hope you guys are seeing those are all chocolate desserts that I've served to people at dinner parties or other occasions where I've had people over for dinner. And even though it's chocolate, it doesn't taste bitter because there's a little bit of something else, either xylitol or coconut sugar, and then stevia is used to top it up. So I would say if you're just starting out with stevia, be sure to pick one of those brands. This would be my first choice of brand. And if you're in Canada, you can order this through Low Carb Canada. And I'll put links down below so that you can get all the links. And I'll also link down below to the recipes so that you can find them. But I would start with that, and I would start with some easy recipes, maybe not a chocolate recipe, maybe something else like the caramel ice cream on my blog, and use just a little bit of stevia and go from there. You can use it in things like tea, oatmeal, even try it in salad dressing instead of, if you've only got a teaspoon of sugar in a salad dressing, try the stevia instead, and you will find that there really is no difference. It's a great way to lower the sugar content in your diet overall. Whether or not you're on a special diet, it's always a good thing to reduce the amount of sugar in our diets. And stevia is a perfect way to do that without having an impact on your blood sugar levels. So I hope that was useful for you today. And if you thought it was, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you can get more of these kinds of videos over time. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.